Joining us now, we've got a little college basketball to talk about. Yeah, it comes upon us real quick. Jones Angell, he's North Carolina play-by-play broadcaster. Good morning, Jones. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yeah, it's easy to get these days confused this time of year. You got football, you got basketball going on. It all kind of melts together. But doing great. Looking forward to heading out your way later today. In fact, the Tar Heels are going to be flying out to Salt Lake this afternoon. Of course, play BYU in that exhibition coming up tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. And what a great opportunity for both these teams in a no-stakes game where it doesn't matter if you win or lose, but you're going to be able to get, I think, a lot of valuable information about your team against a quality opponent. So looking forward to getting out there and looking forward to seeing some basketball tomorrow night.
Yeah, and North Carolina, obviously that is a brand name in terms of college basketball. Your football team has created a bunch of news this year, and we'll see how that goes. But right now, it's about basketball. And the Cougars are sort of a Johnny-come-lately on this national scene. Go to the Sweet 16 last season, and that was the first time since Jimmer Fredette was a senior. They've been in the Sweet 16 three times since 1981, and except for last year, the other two times were when they had the Player of the Year. A guy named Danny Ainge was there, and then Jimmer Fredette. And last year, Kevin Young's first season, he took our community by storm, and then he goes out and gets a roster that isn't traditional in BYU basketball history, and led by A.J. DeMonsa, who's expected to be the number 1 or number 2 pick. We'll see how that plays out when we get to the spring and summer there. But I look at the Tar Heels, definitely a big name. They didn't have the Tar Heel-like season last year. And I don't know if you heard that just in the last couple of days, you've had some big-name college basketball coaches come out and basically rip the sport. Sampson down at Houston, because they had Big 12 Media Days in Kansas City here yesterday, and he was just saying, what are we doing, man? This is an educational institution, but it's not now. You had Tom Izzo talking about guys playing in G League now being eligible to play college ball, and the roster's changing over. Now, you look at North Carolina, I guess you can say they're led by Seth Trimble, but they had 5 players who stayed. So, and that's news these days. It used to not be news, but in terms of the roster, I assume those 5 players combined with some transfers and some incoming freshmen, 6 transfers, I think, that's going to be the bulk of the roster and what we should expect to see, those types of guys out on the court.
Actually, not really. Yeah, most handful of those returners were walk-ons. I mean, Seth Trimble is really the only returning player that Carolina has that has played significant minutes for the Tar Heels in the past. James Brown's another scholarship player who's a true freshman a year ago. Saw some time, but not really a key player for the Tar Heels. Zayden High has returned. He played 2 years ago, was not on the team a year ago, but back this season, and is expected to have a larger role than he did 2 years ago. But for the most part, this is a brand new team. You know, Carolina has 11 new players. They have 3 really talented freshmen, Caleb Wilson leading that charge, top 5 recruit for the Tar Heels this past year. And then you've got transfers from all over the place. You know, Henry Basar comes from Arizona. He'll be starting for the Tar Heels. Jaron Stevenson comes from Alabama. Jaden Young came to Carolina from Virginia Tech. Jonathan Powell from West Virginia. Kyan Evans from Colorado State. So you've got players from multiple different places that are going to play large roles for the Tar Heels this season, plus those freshmen, Caleb Wilson, Derek Dixon, and Isaiah Dennis. But really, Seth Trimble, the only returner for Carolina that has had significant time. And, you know, I do think it speaks to the way that college athletics in total and college basketball in particular is structured right now. I mean, you mentioned BYU, and certainly, you know, the Cougars have some returning guys, Richie Saunders and Keita down low and others, but they've got a bunch of new players too, whether freshmen or transfers, and that's just in the current landscape. That's how you have to do it. You don't. It's very hard to build a program right now. You build a team for one season, and then you do it again the next season. And that's how rosters have to be managed with the current set of rules within college athletics. You mentioned Tar Heel football, and you've seen that on that side as well. I mean, the Tar Heels have 70 new players, 70 on the football team this year, whether it's a freshman or a transfer. And so it is a time of volatility for sure. It is a heavy time of roster turnover for sure. And I think you see that with these two teams competing on Friday night. Both of them have some pieces, but really brand new teams from what you had a year ago.
So you speak of a kid like Vasar, and he did play at Arizona. Modest stats, a pretty good team. He shot 59% from the floor. Remember him well. And then you talk about a kid like Young, who played at Virginia Tech, and he had modest stats. But, those are just on paper here. In a new role, what does it mean? Is Hubert Davis, just looking at those two as an example that I bring up, they've got experience. They have played at a higher level at other institutions. Are they expecting those types of kids to be marginally better, significantly better? What do they need to be to get Carolina where they need to go?
Well, I think just using those two as an example, Henry Vasar is going to play a much larger role for the Tar Heels than Jaden Young likely will this season. At least that's where it's shaping up at this moment. And, of course, they haven't played a regular season game yet, so a lot can change. But Carolina is going to rely on some transfers and some improvement from those transfers this season. And I do think, and Carolina has some international prospects as well. Luka Bogovac has played professionally in Montenegro for the last 2 years. He's going to play and will likely start for the Tar Heels. And so it is a large collection of new guys from different areas, whether it's freshman transfers or internationally, that are going to make up this team for Carolina. And, of course, you expect to have some improvement from those guys as they continue to mature both physically and within the game and get used to playing with one another. And I do think that will be critical, and I think is a big reason why you play games like you're playing tomorrow night, is you get the opportunity to play together against somebody else who has talent so that you get to figure out, hey, you know what, I thought this was going to be really good. Maybe it's not quite as good as we thought it was right now. Let's keep working on that. Or, hey, I wasn't expecting this part of the game to be, or this individual player, but he really stepped up in this opportunity. And I think you can even add an extra level for the Tar Heels in the sense that they are making the road trip, and they'll be playing in front. I know it's not on campus for BYU, but you're playing in front of what will likely be a road crowd. You have to go through the whole travel situation, flying 4 hours to get there, and just all the different things that go with that. And so I think they get some valuable experience in that regard as well. So it should be a really positive experience, I think, for both these teams, and one that hopefully helps them down the line.
Jones Angell, North Carolina play-by-play broadcaster, joining us. Yeah, that led right into my next thought that I was going to have, Jones, is that why – I don't want to say why even bother to do it, but why do it? Because this is a huge road trip, right, from North Carolina all the way out to Salt Lake. I happen to think it's really cool that Hubert Davis is in his program and want to do it. If for nothing else, then I'm guessing a bunch of kids, not Vasar, who we just talked about, but a lot of the kids on the East Coast have never been out our way and to see the mountains and all. So just from an educational purpose, it should be an advantage. But it seems like there might have been an easier alternative there, but I think it's cool that they're doing it.
Well, and, Carolina did a game like this last year where they played, it was for charity, a St. Jude's Classic at Memphis, and ended up winning that exhibition. Memphis ended up having a terrific year. And so, I think Carolina really thought that was a positive experience for them. And so when this opportunity was presented to them to go out and play, I think it's one that they thought would be beneficial. And so for them, it's time to get going. They play BYU on Friday. They're hosting hosting Winston-Salem State, which is an HBCU here in North Carolina, in another exhibition on Wednesday. And then it's regular season time. I mean, their first game is against Central Arkansas on Monday, November 3rd. But then that Friday, they're hosting Kansas in the Smith Center. And so to be able to play another quality team like BYU, I do think helps you when you do get into the regular year, especially with the schedule that Carolina plays, which has Kansas and Kentucky and Michigan State and Ohio State. And that's before you get into conference play, where you're going to be playing Duke and Louisville and all the teams that you traditionally battle with in the ACC. And so, again, just a low-stakes, high ceiling game, I think, for both these teams. There's not much downside to playing this game because of the experience that it gives you.
Now, Carolina has the highest of standards, and as they should, obviously. They're a premier basketball program historically and have been for so many years, year after year. But I think last year they were in the ACC. I think they might have had a losing record, if I remember. And, not a Carolina-like year. Does that put pressure on this year's team, on the coaching staff?
Well, they didn't have a losing record overall, nor in conference play last year, but they didn't have the type of year that they wanted for sure. The Tar Heels went into the NCAA tournament, had to play in that first four. They were 11 seed, the lowest seed they've ever had in the NCAA tournament. So certainly not a Carolina-like season, but does it put pressure? Absolutely. But it's not just last season for Carolina. Since COVID, I don't think Carolina's had been as consistent as the Tar Heels normally are. And, of course, they've gone through a major coaching change, with Roy Williams retiring and Hubert Davis taking over, and then Coach Davis taking over right when the whole landscape of college athletics changes with NIL and the transfer portal. It has been an adjustment, I think, for every program across the country. And so the Tar Heels have certainly not been bad in this stretch. I mean, they played for the national title in 2022. They were a number one seed in 2024. So they have certainly still reached a level of success. But I don't think the Tar Heels have been as consistently successful as they have been for decades, where you are seeing them compete for number one seeds almost every year and ACC championships almost every year. They have been more middling than that here recently. And so, yes, I absolutely think there's some pressure on the Tar Heels this year to put together a good season. And the good news for them is I do think they have a roster to do it. I think they've got a good team, but they've got to go out there and do it. And that starts coming up on Friday night.
Yeah, as far as that goes. And I love that they just play the big-time schedule. And that's what I love about college basketball is you can have these big games. It seems like in non-conference in football, you don't get as many. I'm talking about the sport, not any individual team. But in college hoop that we do have in the non-conference, we have a lot of what we consider marquee matchups. How do you think that the Tar Heels will approach this game? Because you talk about how it's low stakes. And the reason why I bring that up is the Cougars went back to Nebraska last Saturday, and I think they lost by a point or so. And DeBonsa is the big name, the freshman coming in with all the hype. He scores 30, but he didn't play at the end of the game, right? Because ultimately it doesn't matter. But I'm wondering how you think the Tar Heels will approach this game in terms of it matters, but it doesn't matter. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And Hubert Davis was asked that question yesterday at his press conference. And, he kind of rode that line of, well, you're out there playing, so you're trying to win, of course, because you're playing the game. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to give you a chance to try some things. And whether that's different lineup combinations or different play calls or different how you may approach a certain situation. And he said, there's some things as far as game situations. He said that, and I'm speaking as him right now, where he said, hey, we hadn't even practiced some things yet. Right. And so, there might be a situation that comes up in a game that by the time you're into, December or something that you've worked on a lot in practice and that you're prepared for. But here in October, you haven't repped it yet. And so you may not handle it just how you would handle it in a regular season game coming up in a couple of months. And so I do think you ride that balance of you're you're trying to win because you're playing the game. But if you get some other valuable points out of it, then that can be more long-term value than winning the game. And I'll go back to what Carolina did last season against Memphis as an example. Carolina won that game against Memphis. Well, Memphis ended up having a better year than the Tar Heels a season ago. And Carolina just gets into the NCAA tournament. The Tigers were safely in as I think maybe a 6 seed or somewhere in that range, a 5 seed a year ago. And so, it isn't in any way an indicator of how the season's going to play out. And you used a great example of that Nebraska game. I think if BYU maybe handles some situations in the second half differently, and Robert Wright plays a lot more, and DeMonsa's out there when it matters, and maybe that ends up as a different result. But Kevin Young knew that this result means absolutely nothing, and so it's much more valuable if you choose to approach it that way. It's much more valuable to give some guys maybe who are not going to be your starters, give them some pressure opportunities. How do they handle it? So you maybe learn something about them, or if they're forced into action in a key moment in a conference game in January, that they've been in a similar situation. So my guess is that both these teams they want to win, but they also want to get better as a team, and getting better as a team at this point is just as important as the outcome in a game that ultimately isn't on your win-loss record.
Yeah, well said. Jones, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to coming out there, and looking forward to some great action tomorrow night.
All right, thank you. That's Jones Angell. He is the North Carolina play-by-play broadcaster as the Tar Heels coming out to play BYU in an exhibition game tomorrow night, 7 o'clock at the Delta Center. College basketball right around the corner. BYU opens up November 3rd in Las Vegas at I believe it's the T-Mobile Center, playing Villanova, and they got a lot of big games. In less than a month, they will be in Boston to play UConn at the Boston Garden. That's pretty cool too. And eagerly anticipating the start of college basketball, and we'll tell you where the Aggies are picked in the Mountain West. We got that next. Stay with us. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.